ascending path towards consciousness, evolution, revolution.
Hey, what's up? Arturo Manchano here. So I wanted to share some information that I've known for decades. And when I first came across this, I was young, I was disciplined, and totally focused. And I realized that what I had gained access to or was able to do was way beyond anything I'd ever heard about or read about or could possibly believe. But, I went through it, I experienced it, and watching this world unfold, I realized that this is something I should have shared a long time ago. For the longest time, I thought that this information was too powerful to share. I thought that having people with this information would actually probably accelerate the downturn or the direction of where this world is headed, because I felt that it would give people superpowers. And so anyways, essentially, it should change your perception of reality. Now, I know if I heard the information I'm about to share with you from someone, I would say, well, I have a pretty good grasp of reality, and I've never come across anything even remotely close or possible to what this guy is saying. So I've done a lot of reflecting, needless to say, over these last few decades of having this knowledge and constantly trying to learn about the world itself in general, and also pursuing, further information that could possibly reveal what it is that I tapped into. And so essentially, it began with a long time ago, my journey to want to find out the nature of reality, what my purpose here on earth was, those kind of questions. I had those questions and I couldn't shake them. It was something I felt was really important to answer in order for me to develop as a person, as a being, what direction to take, what to focus on, so on and so forth. So I have to say that desire is, I think, something I attribute having gotten access to some of these answers, like the questions I had of the universe, the questions I had of the nature of reality itself, and my place in that spectrum of reality. So at the young age of about 22, 23, I decided I had learned quite a bit of information while studying, going to school, things like physiology, chemistry, physics, biology, a little bit of neurology, a little bit of everything, a lot of ologies. And I have to say, I know that somehow I came across all the right people at the right time to get information that I think is still groundbreaking even today, decades later. So essentially, I started one day. I decided, I'm like, okay, I'd like to see if I can access what I thought was something that like Einstein or Tesla or any mind that really stands out over history that revealed insights of the universe itself. And I thought, well, they couldn't have just been smart. It was something that allowed them to access information that other people didn't have. And I wanted access to that. And somehow I found a way. And so what I'm going to try to do here is try to explain some of the most basics of what I came across and my own theories of how and why this works. And I'm not going to be able to cover everything because there's so much detail. Even now, decades later, I can still remember a lot of the process very clearly. And there's no way I could cover everything in detail as to how I was able to access higher information, but I will give you like I said, the basics of this journey and my own thoughts on what I was tapping into and how. So here I was, 22, 23, and I decided, well, I'd like to see if I could tap into whatever Einstein or Tesla or, any great philosopher had tapped into to have, and let's say even Jesus or Buddha or any of these spiritual teachers, concepts or entities or whatever you want to call them. So essentially, the first day, I'll describe the first day as in detail as to how I thought and what I rationalized and how I came across this workout. Essentially, it was a workout. Really, I call it now an activation. I used to call it like meditation, but it's more like activating your body, your mind, your spirit even. How to fully activate these potential tools that we have to access this higher knowledge. So essentially, I thought, firstly, I thought, okay, if I'm going to jump into this, I had to reflect on what my weaknesses and strengths were. And I knew right off the bat that, I constantly, my mind and focus constantly shift from one thing to another. And so it's hard for me at the time then to stay focused on one thing long enough to make any advancements. So I looked into my own history and thought, well, in order to tap into this, I just knew I had to be focused. That was the first realization I had. And so I thought, well, when was I the most focused? And I realized when I was really, a young teen, I'd say 13 years old or so, I started to work out a lot. And I used working out as a way to feel better in general. And I had a lot of angst around me at the time, in my life. A lot of things I felt were out of my control. And I found that working out made me feel better and was an outlet for the energy, pent-up energy I had. It was a healthy outlet. And I took it to the limit. Like, I didn't just work out a little, I worked out a lot. And I pushed myself. Even during that time, I pushed myself further than most people would ever even come close to doing. For such a young age, too, that was amazing. But what I would find after, let's say, a few hours of working out, I got to the point where, let's say I would do biceps. I would do a whole hour's worth of exercises, all different kinds of exercises for the biceps, and that's how much working out I would do. But the point is, I would find myself, I'd work out in the garage, looking at the mirror that we had, and I would look in my own eyes, and I'd realize, I was super, super, super focused at the time. So with that rationalization, looking back, I realized, okay, well, firstly, I'm going to work out before I try to connect to higher information, access, higher knowledge. And so I came up with it was such varied workouts from day to day. It's like one day I would do more cardio, jumping up and down, and I did it in a small space. I used to play all kinds of sports and work out with weights. Taught myself some martial arts, and so a lot of the knowledge I gained about myself was through self-exploration, just doing my own workouts, whatever I felt like at the time. But I knew that I had to push myself. So when I started to do these workouts, just to get focused, I would do 2 hours worth of physical exercise. And so not only would that get me really focused, but as it turns out, I'm pumping a lot of blood, nutrition, oxygen to the brain. I'm sending a lot of electrical information from my nerves in position, time, space, from tendons to my brain. So it's like, essentially, with the nervous system, it's like an electrical system. The more information you take in from your environment, and you can take in a lot, it's a sense, proprioception, your position, time, space, all that stuff, are a sense that you could highly be involved in, like increasing the input of that information to your brain. So what ends up happening is you're sending extra electrical information that you wouldn't otherwise if you just sat all day to your brain. And so essentially, the way your brain works is it takes in information, whether it's through your eyes, ears, taste, you name it, and it converts it into real electricity, and then your brain calculates, like, what is it? What is this reality? What is this environment? And it responds to it. So, one of the realizations I had was, well, the more information I take in from reality, the greater or the more acutely refined my response as a being to my environment will be, or correct. You get correct information coming in, and more of it, you have more information access to work with in order to make a decision. So by working out 2 hours, I started to also tap into something that I realized later. It's like at first I didn't know. I just did what I felt. I was guided. So I was shown, I was divine this information. I'm just explaining to you now with the knowledge that I possess, the things that I was doing. And one of those things was neurogenesis, which is creating new brain cells. When you work out that much and take in that much information to your brain responds by creating new brain cells. And what's cool about these new brain cells is they're different than the ones you already have, your mature neurons. And so what ends up happening is, it's interesting that these new neurons, and this is like cutting edge information still, these new neurons are more easily excitable. So what that means is, well, you think about what's the function of a neuron, but to transfer information. And so when I was creating these new neurons, I was combining that with like goal setting, or I would put something in my mind during each workout on what I wanted to create in my life. And really, there's no limit on what you could tell these new baby neurons what to do, because they're not like your existing neurons. They don't have the limits that your mind currently has. Like, if I say I want to become younger, you'd go, well, that's impossible, because that's the way you're programmed. But if you tell the new neurons, look, I want to become younger, as they're developing in your brain, as you're creating them, they don't have the limitations. So they're going to try to align whatever way they have to. Innately, this stuff works out. You tell your brain what to do in a super hyper-focused state. And there are studies that show that focus is the greatest trait you can have in order to accomplish things, in order to get things from your mind to reality. So focus is super important. It's one of the most important things aside from discipline, because it takes discipline to do this. So if these are words that you don't feel comfortable with, you're not going to have access to this. I hate to tell you, the knowledge that I'm sharing with you now, it may make you feel smarter just listening to me, but that's not enough. You need action. And I'm going to share something while we're talking about this action thing. It doesn't work the way you think it does. In other words, if I work out specifically, it's not just that I'm working out on my muscles, on my cardio, on my endurance, on my abilities. If I'm focused on something, and it doesn't have to be about body or mind, it could be something like, I'd like to be successful at work. Well, you focus on that while you're working out. And what's interesting is the energy that you're putting into it still applies towards whatever it is you want to create or manifest. So that's a bit of a secret there. Oh, come on, guys, get along. And let me grab one of these guys real quick. Come here. Which one? We're gonna get Chili over here for a little bit. This is my little buddy Chili. So anyways, so the work applied while you're working out, and you're thinking, I want to become a better worker or a better person, or I'd like to attract this or become better at that. You think that you would have to actually practice whatever that is in order to become better, and obviously it works like that as well. But you could be focused and putting energy towards working out, and still that energy is applied towards what it is you want to manifest or create. That's a side tangent. But yeah, I'm going to be explaining, like I said, there's so much information to share that there's no way I'm going to be able to cover it in one video. But I'm going to try to keep sharing as much information as I can as it comes to me. So here I am trying to access this higher knowledge. And so knowing that I needed to be focused, so I figured, okay, more information I can take in, maybe perhaps at the time I was thinking perhaps this is the case, the better, my mind can work with reality itself. So I thought, okay, well, I had just studied all the muscles and their attachments and so on and so forth. So I really had a large amount of information in my head concerning all the muscles. And I thought, well, what would be interesting is if I could stimulate every single muscle that I have in my body, every muscle. And I thought, okay, well, yeah, I'll be sending information, like let's say these distal flexors here. I started with those on each finger. And, I would do it to the point where I was actually focused and could just do the one muscle at the end there. And so what's interesting is your brain is telling it to flex, but then you need the practice. And so you refine the skill. And so what that does is it reinforces your connection with your very own nervous system. And by doing that alone, I'd go on to the next muscle and then further flex and then also extend. And so by the time I was thinking, okay, the back of your neck, your lats, your shoulders, et cetera, et cetera. I went throughout the whole body, everything I could think of. You get pretty freaking tired, not just from flexing the muscles, but from keeping focused in your mind and telling it, okay, well, what's next? Let's try that. And so that was the first workout. I remember doing that exercise with that. And what was interesting is the first 3 days I did this workout, and to reiterate, I knew how to get really, 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 really high naturally, just using my body, like pushing myself. Like, for example, and pushing the limits. Like I remember one day young, 13, 14 maybe, in that garage, and I was doing biceps, and I kept, there was some pain in my life, and I directed it towards working out, and I remember feeling a pain of the muscles burning so bad, but I was looking at myself, and I go, no, don't stop, and my brain was just screaming, like, ah. And I remember pushing myself past the limits of even pain. Now, there's a big difference between pain that's an injury and you're hurting yourself, and pain that's going to be transitory. Still painful, but transitory. So this was transitory, but it was excruciating pain because of the lactic acid buildup was just way high. Normally, anyone else would just say, that's enough. But I go, no. And I remember I could feel something change in my brain, it felt. It was like, I passed this barrier of some sort that's just naturally in there. And, I would get these highs that were just so magnificently beautiful. So a lot of times it was easier, I think, to get some highs through sports. Whether you're running or catching a ball or, you name it, it's a lot easier than just lifting weights. It's like you feel good usually after working out as far as lifting weights, but the whole time it's like, you're just kind of chilling and then pushing yourself once in a while there. Not once in a while, just every set. So every rep. And so, I know myself, I can get high usually by doing 45 minutes of moderate to intense aerobic. So after I hit the 45-minute limit, I know it's like my endorphins start to kick in. Those are very powerful natural chemicals that you have access to in your body. You create, and it's an infinite cascade of reactions. It's like you have your own pharmacy right here if you know how to tap into it. And so 45 minutes of aerobic would get me high. Now, this workout I came out with was a 3-hour workout. And so the first 2 hours was just to focus the mind. And so now I'm going to start talking about some stuff that's more esoteric, which is what I believe I was doing years later, reflecting. So, what I think I was doing, if you believe in the, let's say, wave particle duality of reality, as far as we know today, and I'm sure there's more to it than that, but let's just stay with some of the basic concepts. So, by doing the physical for that long and that hard, essentially, I'm addressing the particle state of reality, the material state. And over time, I would add more and more exercises to my workout as I had an intuition to do so. And at first, I didn't know why I would do these things. And then years later, the information would come to me. For example, one of the exercises I started to incorporate in my daily routine of this superhuman workout is what I call it in a sense, super activation, beyond, is before I would start tapping into the wave nature of reality, one of the things I would do during the first part of the workout is I would walk in my room in a circle. And as I walked in the circle, I'd pay attention to one thing, like light, and then router, fan, vitamins, mirror, pictures, and then, just keep going around and notice something new. Camera, tape measure, CD, and, remote, whatever. So the point is, I would go in a somewhat of a circle and just it wasn't I mean, I would just normally just start noticing the material items around me. And I think what I was doing was paying more attention to the particle state of myself. It's like we're in this form, so it's important to acknowledge and do what you can in order to make this form even more real, I guess. I mean, it's the first time I've ever said that, but to pay homage to the material form. And so there's something called the double slit experiment. If you've never heard about it, I highly recommend that you check it out. It's a physics experiment where it observes electrons and how they act when they're being observed versus not observed. If and the effects it has on its nature, whether it's more particle or wave. So I believe by acknowledging the material items that were around me, I was drawing them more from particle wave state to particle, because my mind was collapsing the wave. You'd understand if you knew this exercise. And you really need to look into this double slit if you're not familiar with it already. It's very revealing as to the mysterious nature of the universe. And so, come on, get with it. You guys should know this stuff by now. It's been out for a long time. So they're, again, addressing the material state. And then, so that's the first 2 hours focus. And then I'd get myself to the point where I would get tired. It's almost like the first workout where you flex every muscle. It's like your mind just gets tired of doing the same stuff and still staying focused. But, you go through it. That's called discipline. And it's very important. With discipline alone, you could do anything you set your mind to. It's as simple as that. You want to play an instrument? You want to learn an instrument? Discipline will get you there. It helps to have the desire to want to do it. It helps you to have the focus to do it. But if you don't have the discipline to do it, you're never going to get anything done. So get that through your sweet mind. I'm kind of talking to myself right now because I knew I used to be very disciplined. Now I'm very happy-go-lucky, and I'm happy with that. But I know I have to become more disciplined again so I can practice what I'm preaching. So, anyways, so here I was tapping into what it turns out was super high information. And so going back to the neurogenesis thing, you create these new neurons, they're more excitable. What's interesting is, and like I said, this is like, I learned about this years later about what I was doing, what I was creating. And so, this is, like I said, a theory as to how it is that I was able to do things that are impossible. I think the process of neurogenesis played a role in that. The new neurons don't have the limitations that your mind does. And so if you tell it to do something, it's going to try to do it. So I think what's interesting is, so these neurons are more easily excitable. So what that means is it takes less energy in order for them to fire. So your brain isn't going to have a thought unless you initiate it. And then that thought just, once you start it, there's a chain of events that happen until, that thought has followed its course. Now, the new neurons are easily excitable, so they're going to be more active than the other thoughts that you have in your brain. So I believe that sets up the environment necessary in order for you to create change on a completely new level. So something that requires usually a lot of time, like, they say 3 months to develop a habit or whatever. This process is even faster. because you're now working to physiologically changing the makeup of your brain for it to be more conducive to whatever it is that you're focused on. Another interesting thing is that, well, actually, I forgot about whatever that was. Hopefully it comes back to me. So you get the idea. Okay, yeah, so what I forgot just now was, what's interesting is that, scientists find that a lot of these new neurons that you create, I believe the number is like 80% of the new neurons that you create are pruned off or just die off. And I think, well, you see, this is where my personal experience, unique experience and insight comes into play. And that is this. So 80% of these new neurons die off. And I think, well, why would that happen? Why would your brain create these new neurons and then they just die off? And to me, it's obvious. So I'm going to share this information with you. And that is, unless you give your brain or these new neurons a direction or a purpose to live, what's their purpose to live? It's their function, to think. So if you set up a goal or whatever you want to manifest, whatever you want to call it, along with creating these new neurons, you're giving these baby neurons a direction. You're giving them hope. You're giving them a purpose. And so they want to be active. Whereas if you just do the workouts, like most people do, let's say they work out hard enough to create these new neurons, if they're not focused on anything but the mundane, what's the use of these new neurons? They're not going to feel useful. I'm sure it's still good for you, but I could see that's why you don't retain as many of the neurons as if you had a purpose for them. So combining physical workout with focus on something that you want to create is a great combination. And while I don't have access to a laboratory that allows you to measure the pruning off of the neurons versus my theory, I can guarantee you, it's the natural order of things. So, you have to go back to, a basic understanding and belief that, nature really, if you know how to work with it, and it's very nature, you have access to a lot of good information that you could stand by. So the closer you are to nature and how it would make sense and work, critical thinking, I guess, then the closer you are to truth, the closer you are to a powerful, natural way of being. And we have to revert back to this. A lot of times, we think that we can change things through outside of ourselves. When really, a lot of the work is on the inside. Like, it's a lot easier to take a pill if you're told, you have something like high blood pressure versus actually working out or doing, whatever you should be doing in order to get better. And so, and that, so basically, do the things that are right. Take the time to do the things that are right. That's all I'm saying. So anyways, now, the things I was able to do, so let's go back to the workout. So 2 hours just to focus the mind. Third hour goes into particle or wave state. We go from particle state, material world, to wave state. Now, what happens was, at least what I feel was going on was, after 2 hours of working out, my brain just got tired of telling my body to move and to stretch or to push or to punch or to be quick or to be agile. It just gets tired. And so you push it so much that all of a sudden you start to go into a flow state. And you have to know where to take the mind once it's really focused and is tired It's like there's a separation that occurs. Okay, you go from body to mind state, or from particle to wave state. And in doing so, I knew I had defined what it was that I wanted to tap into. This, information field out in the universe that I believe has collective consciousness. And let me explain a little bit of this to you. So, like, there are examples of it in history where, like, a patent, for example, would be missed by a couple hours. And, like, whoever developed, like, let's say the light bulb would beat out the other guy by a day or maybe even a few hours. How does that happen? There are records of this. Well, I believe, and these are my theories of critical thinking and understanding and having studied a lot of the universe, a lot. Like, people tell me I study too much still, but it's my voracious mind, and I beat it every day. So anyways, essentially, okay, so there's something I believe is referred to as collective consciousness, and that is, it's somewhat like the 100th monkey effect. If you've never heard of that, you should really look into that. And that is this, where essentially, like, I think the way it goes is there's an island with monkeys that learn how to work a tool, and they teach each other. And after the 100th monkey, somehow the information is accessible by other monkeys in remote locations that don't have access to these monkeys. But somehow the knowledge is spread. How is that? It's very out there, to say the least. My hypothesis is, during these super activation workouts, I would do different things. I would set goals, different goals, and I'd have different journeys. I started to have visions, all natural. For the first time in my life. It's really powerful stuff. Where you can take your mind. It's amazing. And then seeing it reflected in reality without people, like, let's say you focus on wanting to manifest something, not telling anyone about it, and then having someone tell you what you're doing. And you're sitting there going, did I just hear what they just said? How do they know what I'm doing? It's amazing. So it's next level stuff. What I'm telling you right now is legitly, like, the most and I'm, like I said, I'm an information seeker. There's little to nobody else that I know of that has information like this, and I'm just giving it to you freely because number one, I think this world needs it. I think the whole world would be better with this knowledge. So that's why I'm sharing it. Third hour is more wave state. Now, I decided that what I wanted to do during these workouts, not only connect to a higher information, but I wanted to connect to source itself, if that were possible. I didn't know if it was possible or not, but I tapped into something that was so powerful, I believe it was source. Whatever you want to call it, infinite energy, God comes to mind, high frequency, higher self, even aliens. I don't believe in this Project Bluebeam shit they're trying to push on us, but I can't rule out that the information I had access to wasn't of some I don't know where it came from. I have a guess, going back to this collective consciousness thing and a patent being put in like a few hours before. I believe once there's a breakthrough in consciousness on a higher level, it's easier for other people to make that leap as well. So here I am, and hopefully what I'm telling you will change your perception of reality, and you could test it out for yourself. There's nothing like having the first person experience. So I highly recommend that if you have the discipline. This is what I'm telling you is not easy. The first 2 hours alone, good luck if you could break through that. There's like 3 doors. The first one is the physical, to focus the mind. Then the focused mind basically focuses on what? Pure source energy. And I'll get into more of that. Like I said, I can't explain everything in this video, but I'm going to try to at least give you the basics. And then you essentially do breathing techniques, visualization, to take in this higher source energy. Excuse me. So you're taking in this higher source energy, and then you're becoming it. And I'll give you more specific information later on the process and the thinking and the rationale behind what I'm doing. And then eventually you have such an energy exchange with the universe, visualization, breathing techniques, that you become this energy. And then you have access to higher knowledge. You can choose to manifest whatever you want, essentially. Now, it's very important to note here that what I'm telling you is super powerful. Believe me when I tell you, it is very, 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 very powerful. And so you have to be careful. So I consider myself a master only because I fucked up. I was too young when I accessed this information. Always a pure heart. As a matter of fact, the work that you're doing, it's pure work. If I were to describe Source as anything, pure. So, you're becoming more pure during this process, and anyone could do that. If there are people out there right now thinking, well, I could never be pure. I did this and that. I remember when I first started, I thought, well, would I have access to this purity? When I was with a lot of girls when I was younger. I was promiscuous. And I was naive when I was younger, but I was raised in a certain religious background, and they tell you this is a sin, this is good, this isn't good, that kind of stuff. So I wondered, do I have the makeup to access this? And I can tell you right now, anyone has access to this information or this power. Now, it comes with a warning, and that is this. Even by accident, you cannot manifest anything that is harmful, even to yourself, because you will hurt yourself. It is very, very, very powerful. Just like you can manifest and do practically the impossible, well, that goes the other way too. And you don't know if you could take yourself out of the situation that you put yourself into. And, I'm comfortable with telling you, why I say this. It's so powerful that it has to come with the warning, and that's why I consider myself a master. Is not only did I reach these super, 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 super highs, but I also found out what not to do. And so, I'll tell you the process of also the downside. And that was, it just was basically like 7 months into doing these workouts and doing like amazingly wild things, getting myself in such a high state of being that it was just like, I would be at awe Yeah, like I remember one day going to school and thinking, geez, Art, you haven't had a negative thought in months. And I was like, wow, that's trippy. And I was like, can you even have a negative thought? And I remember just thinking as I'm driving to school, and I'm like, let's see. And I'm like, okay, let's try to have a negative thought. And I remember it was such a this is too much information, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. I remember visualizing a thought coming from this direction up here, and then it would just bounce off my brain. It was like there was a protective barrier in my brain, like it wasn't allowing that kind of energy. And I thought, wow, that's trippy, weird, whatever. But and I was like, Art, take note, remember, don't ever forget this, that you're in this state. It's important to remember, especially years later, the feelings that you have. It's like usually what's wild about our nature is that we can accomplish a lot of great things, but we get tired of things real quick, even the impossible. So, even the possibly great things that you could do, you always have to be changing, you always have to be shifting, entertaining yourself, in a sense. And while I'm thinking about this entertaining thing, something that I think is important to share, it's a little unexplainable, but I know you create a relationship with yourself and the universe. So if you don't have a relationship at all with the universe, it's like if you're just like basically Darwin, it's bumping into shit, maybe there's evolution, maybe there isn't. Totally fucking mundane way to fucking exist. Excuse my language. But what are you? I mean, then what's the difference between you and a piece of plastic or something? There's a lot more to you than just random circumstance and happenstances and all that. You have to be the director of your own life. It's always important to have goals. Always have at least 3, I would say, written goals that you write down physically. There's something to the act of writing that brings things more concretely into reality. And so anyways, so collective consciousness, the 100th monkey effect, you have access to this information, I believe, because of one of the exercises I did during one of my workouts, that this information may lie in the ionosphere. Why? Why the ionosphere? Because I did sort of an exercise where I feel like I astral traveled. It was really trippy. And it was because after a while I was like, are there any other people like me on this planet? And at the time, this is a long time ago. Now I'm sure there's a lot of people that may be tapping into this information. I just have a feeling that this, kind of information is more accessible. But the ionosphere is essentially, I believe it has like an electrical field current that's around the Earth. And I think that's where sort of collective consciousness information lies for your mind to tap into. Now, I believe your brain essentially is kind of like a radio device or a radio antenna where what you focus on is sort of like saying, let's say love. It's a certain frequency. It's a very high frequency. It's probably one of the highest frequencies. And so it's high vibration state, more cycles per second, high energy. And, you're kind of broadcasting what you want to the universe. And if you don't have any goals or any idea of what you want to create, you're kind of not broadcasting anything. So, how much say do you have in your experience? The universe is very playful. You have to have a relationship with it. It wants you to interact with it. It wants to be entertained. These are things that are kind of deep. But I'm just laying it out there, okay? And I'm only going to, I'm going to stay at this level. I'm not going to be toning it down for people who are totally linear minded and haven't come across any of this stuff. No, I'm going to start catering to those that are more savvy as far as this is concerned. Now, not to negate, the linear thinker, because I used to be that person, a long time ago. Like I said, I had a good grasp of reality. These things just nothing like this was ever on my radar. And I did pretty good. I felt like I was succeeding and progressing in how to do life, that kind of thing. So going back to the frequency, your brain's an antenna. The goals are essentially telling your brain to programming it to create something. And your brain needs something to focus on, to create. So if you're sitting there complaining, oh, I don't have love or whatever, I have an exercise for that. Before I actually came across these exercises of working out for 3 hours super activation, I actually came across, here, how to set myself up for love. So I've always been intuitive, and I've been gifted in that sense. So that's also information I'll be sharing, but that's another tangent. But it's very important. I mean, in this form, one of the greatest things you can do is experience love. The greatest, pretty much. So, and I see a lot of today's youth, just don't seem to be able to connect in that sense. So maybe, I'll definitely be putting out a video on that information, because, it'd be sad and not to have that experience in your life. And it's, there's a process to it. I'm still a linear thinker. I like to be able to explain things through as much science as possible. Don't limit yourself with science. It's like, how long was gravity in existence before Newton came up with the formula for gravity? The answer is for all time space. So just because science hasn't given a number or formula to it yet, doesn't mean that it's not accessible or not real, or not very important. So, it's very important to realize. So going back to some of this information, and I think I'm almost ready to cut this video short, but there's a lot more information, like, specifically how to focus the mind, what to focus on, what is source. I have my own definition, and I was able to bend reality with witnesses. Now that's another thing. Let me bring that up. Some of the things and gifts that I have, I desired them. For example, I was like, something that totally, just out there. I remember as a kid experimenting with things like, let's say, pot. And I would think, I know I'm kind of seeing some of this stuff. And I'm like, it sucks that I'm the only one who's kind of perceiving something in this way, when it'd be so much better to share this experience with others. And so I really had the desire to want to share some of my experiences with others. And somehow I was able to create that, because when I was manifesting things that are impossible, the universe would always send me someone to confirm what I was doing. Now, you don't need confirmation in order for it to be valid. Personal experience goes a long way. It really does. We don't have feelings or physiologically, I think there's an explanation for everything. You can't just write some things off, It's like, just think about it, what's the percentage of people on earth that believe in a God? Of course, they believe in their own gods, but it's the concept. It's like I like to take information in general and just see, consistent patterns. It's like, wow, all these people believe in this. So the fact that they believe in different gods doesn't make me just throw the baby out with the bathwater. I just think, well, that's interesting. And there's so many insights I can share with you. Like the perfect position to take in this energy that I refer to, a higher source or whatever. Defining what source is. I had to come up with my own definition of what I believe God actually is. You see, the thing is, I ask myself, okay, I hear what you say, I hear what that religion says, I hear this, I take it all in, and I'm like, well, Art, what do you think? You're here, you're alive, okay? What do you think is going on here? You have to ask yourself that. And, well, I'll wrap it up with this. I was like, okay, well, what is God to you, to me? And I thought, well, what would God be to me? And I like to take all the good things. So my God is a good God. Okay, if I had a God, it'd be a good God. Would it be an angry God? No. Preferably not. You want something that you want to align yourself with that's greater than good. So what is greater than? And so, I came up with essentially, I thought, well, what's the most rare, beautiful thing in the universe? And I thought, well, purity is really it. And then, if you go with that, you think, well, what's interesting is, and I had a vision, okay? And the vision went like this. So in this vision, essentially, I found myself very profound, it's like you're 1 second you're sitting here talking to a camera on video and to create a video. Next thing you know, you're telescoped somewhere else, another realm, another reality. Like I said, I never had these visions until I started to do this kind of work. And so they were like insights, profound revelations. And I'm like, I always wondered, it's like, where all these prophets go? Why aren't there any prophets here today? And hello, it's like, that was me when I put in the work decades ago. I was literally a prophet. I can say that now. I've only came up with that 2 or 3 weeks ago. Far from it now. I am human. Okay? So it's like a sport. If you don't practice it, you're gonna suck eventually. So I have the knowledge, though. If you were great in sport, you could coach, right? Because you have the knowledge, you've gone to have the experience, you have the insights. So I have the insights, and I'm sharing with you now. So I thought, okay, what would my God be? And I thought purity. It's the most. To me, I think it's interesting because. So I had this vision. Essentially, I was put in the middle of a circle. I found myself in the middle. And I realized that all of the energy in the universe was around me. I was in the middle. And I realized from the very center, middle, to the very top, infinite, direct line is source. And as you go away from the top, it's high frequency, close to linear. direct current, frequency, high frequency, and then as you go to the sides, lower and lower frequency until you hit polar opposite. So what I related, with from the center to the top, I consider that pure, good, love, light, all of the things that, you would perceive to be good. Graceful, powerful, beautiful, etc., etc. And as you go away from that direct current, it's less than. And the further you go, the less it is. So, purity, I realized, critically thinking, well, if it's the most pure thing in the universe, for it to remain that way for all time space, that means that energy cannot cavort with any other energy type. Otherwise, it's affected by that other's energy's frequency and brings it down. That's when I had a realization. Oh, come on, guys. I'm almost done. Let me introduce you to another one of my little creatures. Who's making noise? Who are you going to bring up here? Do you want to come up here? All right. Oh, this is Buttercup. She's the greatest love I've ever had, almost. So anyways, she's something else. She's a partly terrier, and I can hear the squeaking of the other dog. And she's one of the greatest loves ever. So anyways, using critical thinking, or logic, whatever you want to call it, I realized in order for something to be pure through all time space, it can't cavort with other energy. Therefore, you have to come closer to it. So if you want to become Source itself, then you have to change your frequency to match it, because it cannot deviate from it itself. It has to remain pure. That's a super insight. Thank you for listening. Like I said, I'm going to put out a lot more videos because there's so much information to share on each part of the process of taking yourself to this elevated state. It's the highest highs I've ever tapped into in my life. And trust me, I've tried all kinds of highs. I'm not, I have no problem being a psychonaut. Back then, it was all done naturally. So, you deal with that, And I know, because I did it naturally, when I delve into other methods of trying to reach higher consciousness, that I have greater access because I tapped into this state of being, taking yourself to the highest state possible naturally. And I'm going to teach you how to do that. It's very important that we have this information. That way you know what you need to do. I don't see it anywhere. I'm putting it out there now. I love you guys, and so does Butter. And, if you like what you heard, please click like, click subscribe, and share the video. And we'll be putting out a lot more videos real soon. Take care. Bye-bye.